Hello, hello. So today I want to talk about spiritual depression. Oh, I guess mental health is a very sensitive topic, and I feel it's particularly sensitive to myself because I have a lot of compassion for people who do struggle with mental health, and I think to some degree, perhaps we all do, in some form or another. But in this video, I want to address depression as it pertains to your spiritual journey or your spiritual self, and so on and so forth, right? So, what is it? So, it's pretty much like it will present as, in the same way as clinical depression, and I do not what's the word? Case. I don't want to make it out to sound like I'm an expert or anything because I'm not. Can't just take psychology majors and think that I know everything there is to know about depression. I don't. But at least I can speak to my own experiences and then try to advise anyone who feels like they're going through the same thing. This was also this particular video was motivated by someone who is going through something like that, and I just wanted to reach out to them through this video to sort of say that it will get better, but it's not something that's going to get better on its own. Okay, so I just want to explain what I feel the differences are, because I did go through some form, and not even like once. It would be like I would feel super like depressed, and then come out of it. And this was 5 years ago, yeah. And then come out of it, and then go back, then come out of it, then go back, and eventually. But for me, I always knew that there's something. It's not clinical in the sense that I feel like I need to go and be somewhere, and like I did say in my other videos, that I was on antidepressants for a while in my 20s, actually from age 19 when I started to like not feel great. So I will reference my experience, and then you can see if you're experiencing any of the similar symptoms and things like that. It just feels like a heavy feeling, like nothing's working. I'm just like, nothing's working. My life's a mess. I don't feel like doing anything. I just want to sit in bed all day, and and I just don't feel like seeing people. I don't, I'm just feeling super low in myself, and I'm just feeling heavy all the time. Right now, I think first, I really need people to listen to this responsibly. All right, listen to this message responsibly, okay? Because I'm not saying that your spiritual depression cannot be clinical. I feel like I've just narrowed it down to three things. It can be spiritual depression on its own, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Then it can be clinical depression. Please seek help if that's what it is. And then it can be both. And I'll explain. So, spiritual depression on its own, right? It is basically when you are someone who, whether you know it or not, but if you are someone who needs to initiate or undergo a spiritual journey, and by saying that, I mean, and it's not necessarily that you need to initiate in the traditional sense, like Flokutas or anything like that. If your ancestors need to start the initiation journey on you, can be that as well. So if you need to undergo some initiation or another, okay, then you'll feel it, because ancestors, when they come, it depends. Most of the time, it's not at first at least, it's not necessarily a pleasant experience, especially if you don't know what it is, if you can't recognize it for what it is, because you'll experience various symptoms. Experience pain in your body in some parts. You'll experience like a mental shift or a mental disturbance, or just like I tried to explain, like being in sort of a very depressed state, not feeling good, isolating yourself, super isolating yourself, not feeling like you really want to be around people, and feeling like you're just thinking the whole time, and you feel alone. You have people around you, but it's like they're not there. It's like it's something that you are experiencing. It's almost like you're in a world of your own, in your mind though, and it can be very stressful, and it can be concerning and alarming to the people around you. Okay. How I want to touch on how I'll just provide guidance in terms of how you can tell what type it is. So of the three types I spoke about, how can you tell if it's just a spiritual depression or a clinical depression or both? Okay. Now, typically, like I said, there are a lot of nuances in life. There's a lot of life experiences that we have that can trigger a depression response, obviously, because we are human. We go through a lot of things, and I mean, so that's traumatic on its own, and there's just many things, man. And we have jobs that we have to show up for and be our best selves. If you're studying, if you're doing both, so there's many things that can trigger a depression response in the person. But how I would determine if it's spiritual, first of all, I feel like you would need a reading. So to determine first and foremost if you are a spiritual person, if you are someone who needs to go on a spiritual journey, okay, and initiate in some form or another. Because if that's showing up strong, especially if you have a prophetic gift and an ancestral gift, and there's a lot of gifts, of types of gifts that you can have. And if you someone, say for instance, you've got all of them, or even more than two, or two, I would really tend towards it being more spiritual than clinical. Okay. And also, how I would also say I'm leaning more towards spiritual than clinical is if you haven't initiated, or if you're someone who hasn't really engaged with your spirituality in any form, and also if you feel like you haven't really experienced anything in your life that is particularly traumatic to the point where you feel like it would trigger a depression response, okay, then there I feel like I would say spiritual. However, if you are someone who has been through a lot, like I mentioned, there's a lot that goes on in our lives, and if there are certain experiences that you've been through that I don't know who's that, guys. I don't know if she's singing church songs or what's going on, guys. Sundays. Anyway, so clinical. Yes, I was on clinical. So I feel like it can be purely clinical. I would suggest that you really go and see a professional. The only thing with professionals is that it's like they do have a checklist, and they go down that checklist, and if you tick certain boxes, and that's what it is, right? Guys, I'm not saying all of you, okay? I'm saying some of you. Not all of you. But it will be a tick box exercise, right? And people are unique, man. There's a lot that I feel like sometimes you can look at and say, okay, maybe this is what it is. And like I said, I want you guys to listen to this responsibly, right? Because it's very important. Mental health is important because how you feel, how how you feel your mental health is going to determine just your path in life and how you deal with certain things, right? And this journey needs you to be mentally strong. It needs you to be mentally fit. And that's why you will go through certain things that feel hella challenging, but it is to grow your faith, it's to grow your strength, it is to empower you with the tools that you're going to need to help other people one day. Okay, a lot of my readings this weekend were really with people who needed that message, right? That you're going through something difficult, you're going through difficult experiences, and you need to tune out outside noise. You need to be able to tune out outside noise so that you can focus on your spirit, so that you can focus on your intuition, so that your third eye can open, right? And so I would say that I can't speak to actually, those psychologists that have initiated or gone through a spiritual journey, and then they say that they are both psychologists and healers. And I have personally never been to a psychologist with that. I don't think I'll ever go, but you can if you feel called to do that. But I would say in either case, to determine this, I would say that consult. If you say, for instance, you do have a consultation, let me say it like that, in that sense, and you do find that you have spiritual gifts, then, and you are content with, because it is something, if you do, let me tell you, and again, listen responsibly, this is from my own reference, from my own experiences. For me, it resolved itself after I initiated and after I did everything I was supposed to do. Did I have never, I just don't experience that anymore. Because what happens when you initiate, and if you do it properly, is that abantu bakho ubenza bame kahle. So by that, it just means that you align them properly, within yourself. You align them properly in your life so that you can do the Lord's work, so that you can do the Lord's work, and you can, and that your aura is clear and your energies are pure, and all of that. It will resolve by itself. Okay, spiritual depression resolves by itself, and then who does it usually happen to? So it usually happens, like I said, to people that need to go on a spiritual journey of some form, right? It usually happens to them, and it's gonna be okay. It's really going to be okay, and it usually happens to them. It will especially happen to those of you who have sort of been through multiple experiences with Okobela. Okobela hopping, I call it. Okay. It's just my term. Leave me alone, guys. But don't Okobela hop, guys. Don't. Take as much time as you need to settle, on that, and then take the step, because you don't want to find yourself in experiences where you've gone to one gorilla, it's just started the process, then you stop because of whatever, then you need to go to another one, then you stop for whatever reason, then there's another one, then you stop for whatever reason. It's because you don't spend enough time consulting your spirit, praying about it, really meditating on it, really engaging on it, fasting on it, asking for those answers, asking for that clarity, asking for your intuition to be working within you, right? So invest a lot of time in that, so that you are able to clearly, to be confident in your decision, to be confident in your choice for Okobela, because what they need to do is rather simple. It's rather simple, and the challenging part of Ndwaso and initiation and the spiritual journeys is never really the process itself. It's really never the process itself. It's the lessons. It's the personal lessons that you will go through, and it's the experiences that you'll have afterwards. Because there's a certain expectation I find. This is just my personal opinion. There's a certain expectation that people have that my life is gonna pop after initiation, or I'm gonna become a millionaire or whatever. I'm not saying that can't happen. Hey, ancestors work differently. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm saying that why I'm always saying that your intentions need to be pure, because really this is a job of service. Okay, it's you're serving people. You need to be empathetic to people. You need to be empathetic to their experiences. You need to have, a certain level of compassion, but compassion and empathy that is not naive, because there are manipulators out there also. Just like there are criminals in terms of Utsotsi that will try to just take your money, there are also manipulators out there and people who just come to test you. Okay, so there's a lot of experiences that you still go through where you need to be discerning. Okay, and everything that happens in your initiation journey, whether it's formal in the sense that you have a physical person guiding you, or informal, just in not I just use that term, but if your ancestors self-initiate, right? So, and they can do both. For me, they predominantly I self-initiated, just my ancestors initiated me, and then a month and a half in actual initiation, I was like, yeah, no, I'm ready to go. I was just ready to go. But there was a particular reason why I needed to go there. It was just a small reason, and that's why it was so quick. So be very careful. This is really particularly for people who have unfortunately had a gorilla or had someone who was supposed to guide them and they just didn't guide them in the proper way. That really will cause a spiritual depression. That really will make it worse. Because as someone who as someone who's gifted, and if you have spiritual gifts, you naturally will experience some form of depression. Okay, usually it's like that. I'm not saying always, but usually it's like that. A lot of people I've spoken to, and a lot of people I know of, and a lot of people who consulted with me, that's really what it was, and it does resolve. It's just that you need to get yourself aligned with your people properly, and you need to so usually in African culture that's fine and that's important, but it also needs to be done properly. So it needs to be done in the proper homestead. It needs to be done with the proper clan names. It needs to be done by people who are aligned spiritually, who are aligned traditionally. It needs to be done by someone who has a pure heart. It really just needs to be proper, because say for instance you go and do it at a clan because of the certain dynamics in your family, like, yeah. So look after yourselves and get the necessary consults that you need to get in order to determine, because first you need to determine what it is. Okay, where is it coming from? And then thereafter you will have solutions as to what to do. Because if you have a spiritual depression and you end up in a clinical setup where you are at a hospital, or you are at a place where they will put you on certain medications for extended periods and just like you'll be isolated in those spaces. It won't resolve. It won't resolve. If that's a spiritual depression and it is addressed purely in a clinical sense, it will not resolve. You'll keep having to go back and go back and go back, okay, and then you will just feel hopeless. And I pray that you guys don't reach that point, because it is something that, if you address it properly and you address it in the ways that it needs to be addressed, then that's what you need to do. And in some cases, it can be both clinical and spiritual, right? And responsibly, you should really address both, because things happen to us in our lives. If you've been through particularly traumatic experiences, of course, you might have a clinical depression response to those things. And it doesn't necessarily have to happen in isolation to spiritual depression. Those things can go together. So just be careful. Careful how you seek help. Be careful how you seek help. Be careful how you interpret that help. Be careful how you interpret what's going on. Okay, get clarity on what's going on. Determine what's going on first, because that's the most important part. If you can determine what it is, then obviously you're on your way to treating it. Western doctors, purely Western doctors, will not be able to diagnose your spiritual depression. They won't be able to, okay? That is not included in their training, okay? I don't think. I don't think. So try, and it's going to be very difficult to listen to yourself, especially if you are on certain mind altering medications and things like that, and antipsychotics and antidepressants, and I don't know what else they would give you, but I just pray for for your guidance, and I pray for you to really get the help that you need, and you will be fine. You really will be. It's just about getting clear on what it is, and then basically getting clarity on what the way forward is from there. And whichever it is, there will always be a solution to it. Just don't want you to find yourself in a situation where you are constantly having to go through experiences where you are clinically isolated for depression, and it's not a clinical depression. That's really your problem, and it's really not. It's really not a big thing to resolve. If it is spiritual, it just needs certain things to be followed in order to get a resolution there. Okay, so stay safe, be discerning, be responsible, and be gentle with yourself. Okay, and get proper help to determine what's going on.